Okay, my name's Akeisha Collins, and I'm gonna do my video for the axial skeleton. Sorry if it's a little bit shaky, but this is the first time I have to do the video by myself because I don't have anyone to record. So here we go. All right. So the axial skeleton is a skeleton from the top of the head down the vertebrae. So the head down the middle of the body, the vertebrae, and the ribs. So the first part of the skull, we're going to do the cranium, the cranial bones. So here we have the frontal bones, two parietals. The frontal bone has a coronal suture. The two parietals have a sagittal suture right down the middle. So I flipped this up so it makes it a little bit easier to see. Then you have your temporal bone here, and there's a squamous suture that separates the temporal bone from the parietal. Then you have the sphenoid that comes across. The sphenoid is one bone, the temporal is two. The sphenoid comes all the way across to the other side. Then here you have the occipital bone, and then you have the lambdoidal suture that separates this from the parietal, and then you have the occipital protuberance, which the occipital protuberance houses the ligament alice, which helps keeps the head balanced because it's a little bit heavy for the neck to carry on its own. So we have that. We also have the ethmoid bone, which is one bone, and it's the inner portion, the medial part of the eye. So externally, here's the sphenoid. Oh, before I do the sphenoid, we have the squamous portion of the temporal bone, which is right here. Then we have the lateral portion of the sphenoid, which comes onto both sides. And then the medial portion comes behind the eyes. And with the medial portion of the sphenoid, it's going to be the greater wing and the lesser wing, they actually make the superior orbital fissure, which on a person you would see some slits between there. And the superior orbital fissure house cranial nerves 3, 4, 5, and 6. We have the petrous portion of the temporal bone, which is right here. It's right below and behind the squamous part of it. And then you have the external meatus. In the petrous portion of the occipital bone, you have some auditory ossicles and inner ear structures. So that's what is housed in there. Then we have the temporal mandibular joint, which is the joint that is between the TMJ joint. People get TMJ. It's the temple and the mandible, so it's right there where it meets there. You also have the mastoid processes, which are on the bottom and the back of the temporal bone, so right there on both sides. Then you have the styloid process, which it's like a little kind of process right there, and it's really hard to see on the skeleton, so it's just a little piece there. But after that, we got all the extra. Okay, so then if I open this up, the head of the skull, you're going to see the inner structures. I'm gonna come up here so I can see it. So you have the greater and lesser wing of the sphenoid. So this would be basically the lesser wing here. Let me do it this way so it's easier to see. This is the lesser wing here, or where the lesser wing would be. This would be where the greater wing would be, and part of this would still be the temporal bone, because this is really the petrous portion right here in the temporal bone. So once you get to the greater and lesser wing, you have the sella turcica, which is this dip right here. Inside this sella turcica is the hypophyseal fossa, which has the pituitary gland. Then you have the optic canal, which is going to be between the body and the lesser wing, so it's going to be somewhere in here, and it houses cranial nerve 2. Then for the ethmoid, you have your crista galli, which is right here. The crista galli attaches to the falx cerebrae. Around the crista galli is the cribriform plate, which contains olfactory nerves. So then we're going to do our facial bones. For the facial bones, we're going to have the maxilla, which is right here, and there's some areolar processes there. You have your nasal bone, which is here, nasal bone. The zygomatic, which is the cheekbone, and it forms the lower orbit of your eye. Then you have the zygomatic process, which is here, and it's formed by the temporal bone and the zygomatic bone. The nasal septum is formed by the vomer here and the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. The inferior nasal concha are some, you can kind of see like some little protuberances out here, some little bones that are coming out on the lateral part of the wall of the nose. What those are for is they cause air turbulence, so that whatever air is coming through your nose, it helps with the moisture from the mucus, so when it comes into your lungs, it's not as hard on your lungs when they come in. Next we have the mandible, which is your jawbone. I'm trying to fix it because my skeleton wants to fall apart. Okay, so mandible, which is your jawbone. You have the mandibular angle, which is the way it comes down in an angle. That's your mandibular angle. Then you have your mandibular condyle. Well, let's do the ramus. This is the ramus coming up to the ramus is this part. Then you have your mandibular condyle right there. Then you have your coronoid. So mandibular condyle, coronoid process. You have your mandibular notch, which is going to be right here. So it's this little notch thing right there. Then, oh, we forgot about the body, which is the body of the mandible. Then you have your sternum, which you have the manubrium, the body, the jugular notch, and the xiphoid process right here. So then we have your spine, which on the spine you have your cervical, which are 7 cervical vertebrae. So you have your cervical curves. There's 4 curves. So it curves inwards, then it curves outward for the 12 thoracic vertebrae, then inward again for the 5 lumbar, then out again for the sacral, which was 5 but is now fused to 1, and then there are 2 coccyx, but that's not part of the 4 curves. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. The cervical, there's 7, like I said before. You have the atlas, which is 1. You have the axis, which is 2. The atlas articulates with the occipital condyles, and then this helps your head go up and down this way, like a yes movement. The atlas, it actually has like a bone that comes up called the dens, and if you take an x-ray and you open your mouth, you can actually x-ray it, and this gives you the no motion, the side to side. So you have those 7 vertebrae. The difference between these vertebrae and the thoracic is these have no facets and they have no transverse processes. So if you see here, they're just kind of like that, and then when you get to the thoracic, you see that there's some transverse and facets, which leads me to the parts of the thoracic vertebrae. So for the thoracic vertebrae, you have 12 of them. So let's see. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and then this is the body. So you can it's hard to see here, but it's right there. In the body, you have intervertebral disc that would go between these two. You have a foramina, which is the hole that go in between each body, and that just helps for communication, like for the optic nerves. They can all go through. They go through and they kind of come out here. You have the transverse processes, which are the processes that go transverse with the facets that connect to the ribs here. So this is the spinous process, the part that's sticking out here. And that's it for that. Then you have your 5 lumbar, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then you have your sacral, which again I said is 1 bone now, but it's actually 5 that fuse into 1, and they fuse around age 28 or so completely. And then you have your coccyx down here. Your ribs, you have 12 ribs. So you have 2 floating, which are 11 and 12. You have 8 through 10, which are false ribs because they don't connect to the sternum. They kind of just connect to the chondral part of the ribs. And then you have the true ribs, which are 1 through 7 that connect to the sternum. Alright, so I think that's all. And hopefully you can see everything because I'm very shaky trying to record this and point to the stuff. But that's it.